Let's create a new composition for this. Name it text3 and make the dimensions of the composition 600 by 338. And let's type a text. I will type 100. You can immediately notice that the text comes with a stroke, just like the previous time. I'll put it in the center and make the animation that's already become classic for us, which is an animation of blinking through opacity. Simply open opacity, set the first keyframe at 100 and the second one at 0, and copy these two keyframes several times, for about 10 frames. You should definitely set the last keyframe to 100. Also, copy all these keyframes, paste them in about a second apart, and cut the layer to get an animation of appearance and disappearance. Next, let's animate the tracking. Go down to the text properties, click on this little arrow next to the word animate, and select tracking. Next, create the keyframe on the tracking amount approximately in the middle of the animation, and on the next frame, simply increase the value so that the text moves apart a little bit. I mean the letters. And after a few frames, just animate the same thing, but with a slightly larger value. And I've got such a simple animation here. Next, let's do the same simple animation on scale. To do that, press the S key, set the first keyframe approximately on this frame, and simply decrease it on the third one to get such a sharp increase in the text size. But as I see, the anchor point stands below, so let's put it in the center like this. Now I will pre-compose this text with the Ctrl-Shift-C keyboard shortcut, name it somehow, and click OK. Now I will draw the same masks as I already did. Select the rectangle tool and draw a mask like this one. Then duplicate the layer, change this mask so that it's in the center, duplicate the layer again and move the mask to the right. Now, move them in timeline by a few frames to make everything look more random. We've got such a cool animation. You can also add a fill at the beginning. That is, go back to the text, duplicate the layer and change it here from stroke to fill, and you get such a thing. Let's shift it by one frame, and you can see how the text is blinking now. But let's keep the top layer only for a couple of frames so that it literally appears and disappears. Yes, that's it. Let's see. Yes, it has turned out very cool. In general, this style, I don't know if you can call it a style, is a pretty cool way to animate various texts and various elements if you work with all sorts of interfaces in the cyberpunk style or so. But I will continue and return to the main VFX composition and drop the newly created text there. Let's say about here, above the element. Let's make it in 3D right away. And while holding down Shift, I will parent it to the null object which the skull is attached to. That is, the text is in 3D space now. Let's move it a little forward, also a little to the right, and even lower so that it is approximately where the right eye is. Reduce it to approximately such values. Also move this layer in timeline so that it does not start again. Now you can duplicate it and move it to the other eye. Press Ctrl D and move it here. I will also shift the duplicated layer by a few frames so that the animation looks more diverse. It's already working pretty good, but let's add a more interesting thing. Duplicate these two layers by pressing Ctrl D, or rather select them and press Ctrl D. Next, Simply move them along the Z-axis a little forward. Press T on the keyboard. Open the opacity parameter and reduce the value to about 23 or to the value that suits you more. And we've got such a small volume here. It's a very cool technique that is used in creating various interfaces, elements for video, and you can use it for free and without registration. Let's move forward a bit and increase the opacity. Yes, like that. And basically, we're done with creating of various elements. Now you can add even more elements that you can take from the wonderful pack that I have made specifically for this course. So let's go to the folder with these elements. I probably don't have everything here yet, but let's say I'll definitely add this one. I will drag it to the project window and immediately drag it on timeline. Let's switch it to 3D right away, switch to Add mode, and while holding down Shift, parent it to one of the text layers near the eyes. Let's also reduce it and move it to the center. About here, and a bit higher so that this element is on the forehead. Also, let's probably turn it a little along the X-axis. That's it. Now let's apply the tint effect, since fill will fill the layer completely, and simply change the white color to red. A miracle is happening right before your eyes because there are more and more elements and they look very beautiful. And the more elements you have, the more beautiful it looks. However, this is not always the case because you can go too far, and it's important to be able to find some balance between all these elements. Let's move this element forward a bit, like this. And let's probably add one more element. Let's see what we have here. Let's add this one. I will drag it to After Effects, and now I will duplicate the element that I have already added. So duplicate this element that I already have, and while holding down the Alt key, drag the new element to the timeline. It will be replaced immediately. Let's probably make it here, near the nose where the ring is. Let's turn and let's probably lower it a little more and move it on the timeline by a few seconds. I will reduce it a bit more to this value. And now let's duplicate this element and move it so that it starts and ends. Since all elements are mostly looped, you can duplicate them an infinite number of times and you will have a looped animation. I think we're done with elements. Let's adjust the color of the material that should glow. Let's go to Element in Scene Setup. I will change the color to pure red and increase the reflectivity value. Let's see if refraction can help us. No. Let's adjust the reflectivity. And here I've got such a mirror circle, which subsequently will shine much better than just matte material. Now you can see such beautiful glare here that will shine later. Let's see what I've got. And I've got pretty stylish and cool animation that can be used in various situations, real life and imaginary. But let's continue and remove, or rather put the text behind the object. And now I will do a rotoscope of the body, therefore duplicate the footage at the very bottom and leave it the only visible element. First, let's make a contrast for this footage so that there are sharper lines and it's easier to make a rotoscope roto brush. Let's go to the footage, apply the curves effect, and make a curve look something like this. The main thing is that these body lines should become more clear. Let's go back, remove the effect of the 3D camera tracker, we no longer need it, and here click on the Roto Brush tool, and then, if you double-click in the preview window, you can already draw and do a rotoscope. The main thing is that before that, you have resolution set to full here. Otherwise, if you do it on half or on third, there may be artifacts if you switch to full. In general, always do a rotoscope at full resolution. Now you can rotoscope the body. It's very simple. First, let's increase the parameters of the brush. Okay, I don't have it here, so go to Window, Brushes, and here select the brush size like this. We don't need to rotoscope the face, we only need to rotoscope this part here. Just simply start drawing here like this, and you can see how the edges of the body stand out clearly. Such a stroke appears just like in Photoshop with the magic tool. So select, draw here, finish, draw here so that the line appears. And here I have an unnecessary element. Hold down the Alt key and draw over it like this. We've removed it. You can clean up a bit this way. That's it. And now just move 10 frames forward, and the process of calculating frames has started. You can notice, by the way, that the rotoscope did not go very well. It twitches a little. If you move the frames, you can notice as if some ants are running. We can finish drawing and remove the unnecessary parts. It's okay if the rotoscope is somewhat fuzzy because the elements appear, disappear. They will not always be in the camera's field of view, so don't be afraid and let's do the rotoscope to the end of the video. Okay, move 1 second forward. And here you can notice that the calculation process is coming to an end. You can increase this area and then the calculation will be right before that frame. Now, let's say if you do it to the end, the calculation will last until the end of the video, but I do not recommend doing this and recommend pausing at least every 10 frames and see what you get. Because if you select, for example, an object on the very first frame and make a calculation, let's say 6 or 8 seconds long, something may go wrong in the middle. These kinds of artifacts will appear. Therefore, I recommend that every few frames you watch what happens. If there is something you don't like, you correct this animation. In this example, in fact, it works very well. The unnecessary stuff does not come up. We can calmly move on. Let's click on this icon here to see the edges of the mask. Let's see what we've got. Now there are rough edges, so let's increase feather. Set it to about 14, maybe a little more, then it will be perfect. What's next? There is a very important thing that you always need to do after you have done a rotoscope with RotoBrush. It's to click Freeze to freeze all the frames. Otherwise, during the further work, it may go wrong and do a calculation of all frames again, and this can greatly slow down your work on the rotoscope. So click Freeze and wait until all frames are calculated. Okay, the frame calculation is finished. Now if you draw here, nothing will change. You can check it calmly. Now you cannot affect the rotoscoped part. Let's go back to the main VFX composition, and you can see how only the body is highlighted here. Now let's move this footage above all the layers that should be behind the object. and I'll put it under the element. And now if you look at the animation, you can see that all of the text is both behind the skull that we added and behind the person that is in the frame. Let's also go to the footage and remove this contrast that we have added and go back. Well, almost everything is ready, but there are still moments ahead that we should correct, so let's continue. Let's add the VFX composition to a new composition, rename it right away to Post, and create a new adjustment layer in this composition. Now apply the deep glow effect to it. I hope you have it. If you don't have it, you can purchase it or use the standard glow built in After Effects. It is also not bad, but I prefer deep glow. It just has more settings and it makes a better glow than the standard built-in glow in After Effects. Okay, go to Input and set threshold to about 90. Also, when you do this, you can notice that there is a light coming from the sky, but you do not need it, so how can you fix it? Let's go to the footage, let's find it and apply the curves effect. And then just lower the white point a little so that it is not white but a little gray. Thus, the Deep Glow plugin will not capture the brightness of the sky, but will capture only the brightness of all our elements. Let's increase the radius so that the glow is even greater. In general, I always like to add glow literally in all the projects. It somehow makes them better. It's like some kind of a cherry on the cake, you know. And that's all. We've created a small number of elements for this project, filled the scene with different things that blink, appear, and disappear. And in the next part, we will fix some things. I won't say what exactly for now, so see you in the next part.